Hey guys, welcome to Whiskey and Words, Episode 3, Part 1. If you're still watching this nonsense, thank you. I appreciate you. I'm hoping that this episode is a pretty big springboard into where I want this thing to go. Now that I've kind of figured out what to do and what not to do, I can make some improvements, and we're going to talk about some real shit today. The real shit that made me want to do this in the first place. So I've already gotten a few questions about why I'm doing this episode in 3 parts. The reason is, there are 2 reasons really. Number 1, if I make a 3-hour video, nobody wants to watch that. The only 3-hour video anybody wants to watch is Avengers Endgame. I can't compete with that. The second reason is, in order to get into the meat of this discussion, I need you guys to have an open mind. So Part 1 and Part 2 are going to function as thought experiments to get you thinking the way I'm thinking so that we can have this discussion. Now, I've called this episode, There Are No Facts. And I'm sure that plenty of you are out there thinking, what? How could you say something so ridiculous, so dumb as there are no facts? And you're right. It's a dumb and ridiculous thing to say. As my previous guest pointed out, if you watched the last video, if I say there are no facts and I'm correct, then that's a fact and we're in a paradox. And paradoxes can be fun, but I'll give you some context as to what I'm talking about. In this context, me saying there are no facts is a reflection on our perception of reality and how inaccurate it very well could be. Before we get started, today I'm drinking a High West Campfire whiskey. It's their straight bourbon, straight rye, and blended scotch all mixed together, which might sound weird to some of you, but it's actually very good. And I tried it for the first time down in Maryland at a bar, and I decided I had to bring a couple of bottles back home with me. So here it is, and if you stumble upon it, I would definitely give it a try. I'm also trying Whiskey Stones for the first time. They were recommended to me by a friend, and so far a good recommendation. I've had 3 different drinks with them, and the flavor profile is incredibly, unbelievably different than what you get when you put ice in there and it gets watered down. So certainly some things are better watered down, but good whiskeys are not one of those things. Back to the point. Let's start with how we establish what is a fact. And the way that we do that is through the scientific method. We observe and we calculate and we experiment. And those are all great things. They've led us to some pretty good scientific predictions in our lifetime. One of which, most recently, because of those predictions, we were able to take a picture of a black hole, which was pretty cool. If you haven't seen that, Google it. It's not really a picture of a black hole, but that's a topic for a different episode. The problem is that we are finite organisms, and observation only spans our existence. And even though we can pass down information from generation to generation to generation over a wide range of years, our lifespan is nothing compared to the existence of the universe. So what we observe is just, it's so small. We estimate that the universe is 13.8 billion years old, which is quite old. We also estimate that humans, as we know them, have existed for 300,000 years, which is quite old compared to our lives, but quite young compared to the universe. In fact, it's 0.0022% of the existence of the universe. We also estimate that civilization has only existed for about 6,000 years, and that's 0.000044% of the existence of the universe. It's the blink of an eye. It's absolutely tiny. To kind of illustrate that point, let's talk about a thought experiment. So imagine you're part of a tribe of people wandering the earth looking for a good place to settle with adequate resources. You're not finding much. After years of wandering, you find this structure you've never seen before. We'll call it a water tower, right? You and I know what a water tower is, but this tribe has never seen a water tower before. They don't know what it is. It's just this giant structure, unlike anything they've ever seen. Maybe God put it there because he wanted to help them out. They've been wandering for a long time. They needed some help. Maybe it spontaneously occurred because a pool of metals and other stuff was struck by lightning and boom, water tower. Maybe it was left there by a previous civilization who destroyed each other because of religious differences. Who knows? Doesn't really matter. The point is, they come across this water tower and they think, this is a sign. We should probably settle here. What a cool thing this water tower is. They shortly after that discover that this tower is full of M&ms, not water, which I know what you're thinking. Awesome. Every town should have a water tower full of M&ms. I wish that my town had a water tower full of M&ms. I don't know what I would do with it, but we should have one. If the average water tower is about 20,000 gallon capacity, that's approximately 78 million M&ms in that water tower. And we know that there are 6 colors of M&ms, original M&ms, which means about 13 million of each color in this water tower. Now, this tribe has never seen a water tower before. They don't know what a water tower is. They've also never seen an M&M before. They don't know what an M&M is. They don't know that there are 6 colors. But we know, so we can have this conversation. To illustrate this point, I have acquired a water tower full of M&Ms. Well, it's not a water tower. It's a candy dispenser. It's meant to have M&Ms in it, unlike a water tower, but it'll do the trick. So imagine every day at noon, based on some mechanism within this water tower, 10 M&Ms come out, and that's what you get. The only thing you know about water towers or M&Ms is that every day at noon, 10 come out of this thing, and that's what you get. You've never seen an M&M before. Again, you don't know what to expect. You just get what the machine gives you. So every day, this happens. Now that's not 10, but we're scaling down, so we'll call it 10. All blue. That's kind of weird. Based on what we know about M&Ms, there are 6 colors, generally in a bag, randomly assorted. Of the first 10, we would expect to see at least a couple of colors, if not all of them. So all blue is weird to us, not weird to this tribe. And this happens every day, right? There's more. We'll call that 10, a little bit less than 10, but again, all blue. That's kind of weird. Luckily, blue is my favorite color. Every day. Imagine this happens every day for 100 years. All right, that made up for the last 2 not being 10. We're probably at about 30. But again, all blue. What are the odds of that? Pretty slim. Imagine every day for 500 years, we'll say. 500 years, every day, you get 10 M&Ms, and they look like that. Lost one. All blue. Again, you and I know that there are 6 colors of M&Ms, generally randomly assorted. We would expect, after 500 years, to see some random assortment of M&Ms. At least a couple other colors than blue. And as awesome as blue is, we'd be disappointed. But this tribe knows nothing about M&Ms. They only know what comes out of this machine every day at noon. And after 500 years of only getting blue M&Ms, it would be reasonable for them to assume that there are only blue M&Ms. 500 years, long time. Every day, only blue. 10 a day, blue M&Ms. So imagine you're a scientist in this community. You could deduce, granted, scientists don't live 500 years. So you're a scientist at the end of a long line of scientists who have studied this machine, giving you 10 M&Ms, all blue, every day. If you deduced that all M&Ms were blue, That'd be a pretty reasonable assumption based on your observation over a very long period of time, every single time blue M&Ms. But imagine that what you see here is not the case. And again, you can't see inside of a water tower. You can see inside of this thing because it's meant to be seen inside of. But a water tower, you can't see inside of. And imagine you can't penetrate the core of this water tower. You see a water tower, you get 10 blue M&Ms. Imagine what's really inside this water tower looks like this. There are, in fact, 6 colors of M&Ms. They are, in fact, evenly distributed, but they're separated by color. So, at the bottom is all the blue, and not until you get through all the blue do you get to the next color. Based on the numbers that I gave you earlier, it would take almost 3,500 years to get through all the blue to the next color. That's pretty crazy. 3,500 years, every day, 10 M&Ms, all the same color. That's a long time, a lot of observations. You could assume all M&Ms are blue. But 3,500 years and a couple of days later, you get an orange M&M, and you're like, holy shit. Now, none of us are ever going to live 3,500 years. Humanity, as we know it, might not exist for another 3,500 years. Who knows? But if we keep observing the same thing, we're going to make the same conclusions, which is pretty crazy. I know this is a simplistic model. I'm only trying to show you that observation can be tricky, and we see that in everyday life. Here are some examples. Number 1, right now, you're watching me make a video talking about our observation of reality in the universe. But right now, I'm not making a video of you watching me talk about the universe and reality. I'm not making a video right now. I don't know what I'm doing right now because I don't know when you're watching this video. But you and I both know I recorded this video at some time in the past, and then I posted it on YouTube, and now you're watching it. You know that, I know that. That's a very useful thing to know. It's a good thing to know about our interaction. Another example, if you live in a place with minimal light pollution, you can go outside at night and look up at the stars. But you're not seeing the stars. You're seeing light that took a really, really, really long time to get here from a star that might not even be there anymore. You and I both know that fact, and it's a useful thing to know. Another example, in physics, we have the observer effect. And what that explains is that by simply observing a scenario, we can change the outcome. Where that's most applicable is very, very, very small objects. Because in general, to observe something, we have to bounce light off of it. And if we bounce light off of something very, very small, it can have an effect on the outcome. In fact, the double slit experiment proved that even passive observation can have an effect on the outcome. So we both know that, probably. If you didn't know that, you should definitely look it up. It's good stuff to know. But knowing that is useful information. Knowing all of those examples that I just said are useful information for how we interact with our environment. The trouble is what we don't know. And we don't know what we don't know, right? Observation is tricky because there are things that we can observe that we don't even know about. Another cool example of observation and its flaws are explained in the very first educational fun YouTube video that I ever watched, which is by Michael Stevens and Vsauce, and it's called, "Is Your Red the Same as My Red?" That's the video that got me on the track to trying to do something like this. You should definitely check it out. I will put a link to it in the description. But they explain that color is a phenomenon that does not occur in the environment. It only occurs in our minds. And even though we have language to describe color in terms of various different wavelengths of light, we can never describe with our current language the experience that one person has looking at that wavelength of light compared to another. And it's a pretty cool video. I'm not going to be able to convince you. You should definitely watch it. But things like that, combined with, they also talk about qualia and the explanatory gap. It's just more flaws with the concept of observation in terms of determining what we're looking at in our environment, because everybody sees things in a way unique to them, and we don't yet have the capacity to share that experience with other human beings. Another cool example, I found a quote by an Indian poet and artist. I'm going to destroy his name right now, but Rabndranath Tragore. That's how I'm reading it. I will share this quote and his name in the description, and hopefully I'm close. But the quote is, "There is the reality of paper, infinitely different from the reality of literature. For the kind of mind possessed by the moth which eats the paper, literature is absolutely non-existent. Yet, for man's mind, literature has a greater value of truth than the paper itself. In a similar manner, if there be some truth which has no sensuous or rational relation to the human mind, it will remain as nothing so long as we remain human." Think about that for a second. I'm going to take a drink. It's a pretty cool quote. It's quite loaded. You might want to rewind, watch it a couple of times. But when you think about that, you might consider the huge leap from a moth to a human being, right? And it is quite huge. We consider ourselves to be very intelligent. We have concepts of physics and mathematics that we've used to analyze our environment and the world around us. And certainly, compared to a moth, we're quite intelligent. But it would be foolish of us to think that we are not also moths, chewing away at the paper of the universe while missing the message written all over it. The moth is only concerned with paper as it pertains to sustenance. And even though the moth might see writing on the paper, it has no capacity to understand that writing. It's not important to the moth. There's no interaction there between the words and the moth. Now, we look at the paper, we see the words, we understand the words, and we should take great pride in the fact that we are that much more advanced than a moth, that we can read poetry and understand it. But if we were to think that there is not some paper out there that has writing on it, that some other organism, some other being, some other form of consciousness might be able to read clearly, that maybe we can see, but we don't have the capacity to understand, it's ridiculous. How can we see that there is a leap from moth to us, but assume there's no possibility that there's an equally big leap from us to something else? It would be crazy. Even though we have this huge understanding, great understanding of physics and mathematics, that there is something that we don't see just because we don't have the capacity to react with it. To recap, what I'm trying to say is we observe things, we analyze things, and we come to some pretty good conclusions. But we can't see everything. There's no reason to assume we can see everything. And in the context of observation and interaction, for us, there are no facts. I want you to think about that for a little bit. The next video will be another thought experiment, quite different from this one. And then again, the third episode will be the actual discussion. I want you to have this stuff in your head when we start the real discussion, because it's going to be important for you to be open-minded and consider the possibility that there are things out there that you don't know about. I really look forward to seeing your questions in the comments of this one. Keep in mind, again, there are 3 parts to this episode. So some of your questions might be answered in a later video. I think after these 3 videos are done, I'm going to try to do something a little bit different. I'll either do a video responding to questions you guys type in the comments, or I'll try to do a live video so some of you can watch in real time, submit questions, and I will respond to them right away. If you have a preference, let me know in the comments, and we'll find a cool way to do it. Until then, thanks for watching.